Very good morning to you. Yeah, it's been a cracking news week. Lots of interesting topics, stories doing the rounds, and of course, Newsroom, the team. Yeah, Albert, myself, and Kendall. Oh, we've been with you the whole week, and we'll be with you until midday today, bringing you, well, all the news and some of the disturbing stories and topics, Albert. And today we've got a particularly interesting focus, don't we?
Well, very disturbing. The focus this morning is on the 2015 annual school survey, which showed that over 15,000, listen to that number, 15,000 people that fell pregnant last year. And not just high school, even in primary school.
Primary, I was shocked. I saw the number, 109 grade 3 learners fell pregnant. Now think about grade 3. That's standard 1 in the old language. If you don't know where grade 3 is, that's a 9-year-old. Yeah. 109 9-year-olds fell pregnant, around 9 years old, yeah, in South Africa.
And that is why we're asking you this question this morning. What action do you think should be taken against adults who impregnate school-going children? That's the question for you. Let's see what you have to say about that on the Twitter handle at SABC Newsroom.
Bonani comes and he says to us, for me, they must be charged, but we don't see in as far...
Enough, probably.
Enough awareness done at schools for teenage pregnancy. Yes, Bonani, we'll investigate that. We'll talk to the department today. We've got a whole host of stakeholders and interested parties as well as experts to talk about exactly that. What should we do about this? But obviously we're also running a poll.
Yeah, we're conducting that poll, and that poll we're asking you almost similar question there, but what should be done? Should the pregnant learners be allowed in South African schools? That's the question we pose to you. We'd like to find out. 169 votes in Eben. 67% of you around Africa are saying yes, learners should be allowed in South African schools. 33% saying no.
Interesting. It's 2/3 are saying yes. Williams Lesaba says Newsroom schools are not pre-mothers assembly and it'll promote student pregnancies, says Williams, if you allow them in the schools. Lehasa comes obviously and he says
I don't see any problem at all. They never raped them, but they agreed to each other. So what's the problem?
Yes, Lehasa, but what about...
9-year-old, Lehasa. What about a 9-year-old?
Forex Weekly comes in and he says, Newsroom, all the pregnant learners are voting yes.
A full name. Trutsi says that it is an issue is sick. Why not? Is victimizing them more or less appealing in the question here? Well,
it's just a question. That's what it is. We should be allowed to ask ourselves questions as a society. Hans Strubit. He comes, he says, of course they should be allowed. The chances that after the child is born, they'll return to finish schooling is far too low. That's an interesting observation.
Very interesting observation. We'd like to get more interesting observations from you. Let us know at the Twitter handle at SABC Newsroom as well as on the Facebook page.
Of course, we're also running that question to you. The question is, what do we do with adults who impregnate underage school-going children? What action should be taken against those adults? That's the question. We want you to interact with us here on the Newsroom show today. We've got that and a whole lot more happening on the show until midday, so don't go away. Stay with us. Alvis is going to take us away.
Details of last night's highly charged cabinet meeting in Pretoria are expected to be released today. The South African Communist Party will hold a media briefing this morning. We'll go there live shortly after 10 o'clock, so stay tuned. And the Reserve Bank Monetary Policy Committee will announce its decision on interest rates today. What can we expect? To increase or not to increase? Now that's the question. We'll also pose that to Professor Parsons a little bit later in the program, but that's all coming up. But let's find out from Kendall what's happening on the sports front. A very good morning, Mr. Makamati.
Gentlemen, it's really nice to be back in this spot here in the little naughty corner to talk about sports, especially after some really heavy days of funerals and memorial services for our two great icons, Joe Mafella, small screen icon, as well as Uncle Kathy, Ahmed Kathrada, passing away. So I'm really happy to be here talking sports to you. There's lots to talk about, Eben. And also, Morocco's Swallows have been relegated.
fourth tier now. They're down in the fourth tier. One of the giants of South African football down in the fourth tier.
70-year-old club. 1947, they were first started.
They used to be called Soweto Giants. What do you call them now?
I don't know. Amateurs, I don't know. Minnows from Soweto. Good morning to you. This is what we have for you in the sports today. South Africa's Proteas end the year on a high, finishing second on the ICC Test rankings after starting the season in 7th.
We have a lot of exciting things. I can tell you now, we're speaking to international sponsors and local sponsors that showed interest. They've approached us, we never approached them.
Just a week after posting a 23 million rand loss for the year 2016, Saru announced that Fly Safair has taken over from SAA as their domestic carrier. In less than 3 years after being relegated from top flight football in the PSL, Moroka Swallows get the drop into amateur football. Now, all this and more will be covering for you later on at 10:40. I'll also be doing a sports focus with Eben where we talk about the big story of the day. For now, it is back to Elvis who's got the news.
Thank you, Kendall. Top story this morning. There are reports that the ANC top six are split over whether the Finance Minister Pravin Gordhan should be sacked. Details of a highly charged cabinet meeting in Pretoria are expected to be released today. Cabinet met at the Union Buildings last night amid reports that President Jacob Zuma was on the verge of axing the Finance Minister Gordhan. The Finance Minister says he will remain a loyal servant of the public even if he is axed. He was speaking at the funeral of Ahmed Kathrada, where he received a standing ovation. The South African Communist Party will hold a press briefing at Cosatu House in Johannesburg this morning. The details of the media briefing are not yet known, but the briefing is expected to touch on the country's current political situation. Our reporter Aldrin St. Pierre is covering the story for us. He now joins us from there. Very good morning to you, Aldrin, and welcome.
Good morning, Elvis.
Paint us a picture as what's currently happening there.
Well, Elvis, we expect the SACP to brief the media on what has been termed an intelligence report that President Jacob Zuma allegedly tabled in front of the ANC's top six on Monday, as well as in front of the SACP. It's reported that the president used this report to argue why Pravin Gordhan, as well as his deputy, Mcebisi Jonas, should be let go. The intelligence report, according to this report, according to details that have emerged so far, tend to point out that Mcebisi Jonas, as well as the Minister of Finance, Pravin Gordhan, when they were on the roadshow in London, and while what has been reported to be a roadshow to try and woo investors, President Jacob Zuma believes that this intelligence report proves that Pravin Gordhan, as well as Mcebisi Jonas, were meeting with people, or were going to meet with people who were trying to overthrow the government, and that's the reason why he seconded them and asked them immediately to return back to the country. Remember that they landed back on was it on Tuesday, when they met with the ANC Secretary General Gwede Mantashe, and now we expect the SACP Solly Maphaila to give us more details with regards to that meeting that has taken place. I just read an article early on where Solly Maphaila said in that article that because he believes that the good faith has been broken, trust has been broken in terms of the meeting that has taken place between the SACP and the president with regards to the details of this report. That's the reason why he is speaking out. So we expect more details with regards to this report. And you know, quite interesting, Elvis, is that this report bears the markings of the Browse Mole report. If you remember back in 2007, when it was reported, when the then Scorpions compiled an intelligence report in which they stated then Deputy President Jacob Zuma, rather Jacob Zuma at the time, was meeting with intelligence operatives in Angola, and they were financing his campaign to become president of the country. This was during the time when Thabo Mbeki was still the president of South Africa. So it will be quite interesting to see how this exactly plays out. But it does speak to a bit of paranoia that's probably going through politics at the moment, and uncertainty that's probably going through politics at the moment. And what this means for the likes of Pravin Gordhan, does it mean that after this cabinet meeting that took place yesterday, that the president will make the final decision, as it's been reported before, that it is the president's prerogative. It is the president's prerogative who he hires and who he fires to be part of, who he hires and fires as ministers and deputy ministers in the executive.
Eldrin, exactly what time is that media briefing supposed to kick off this morning?
The media briefing is expected to kick off at 10 o'clock.
Thank you so much, Eldrin. We'll come back to you a little bit later. That was Eldrin Sampear on the scene there, where the briefing will take place this morning. Now, the Reserve Bank's Monetary Policy Committee is expected to announce its decision on interest rates today. South Africa's rand and bonds extended losses on Wednesday amid speculation of an imminent cabinet shake-up that could see the finance minister, Pravin Gordhan, removed. Now, later on, we'll be speaking to Professor Raymond Parsons on the possible outcome of the numbers later today. The late struggle stalwart, Ahmed Kathrada, has been laid to rest at the Heroes Acres at the West Park Cemetery. Kathrada died yesterday from complications following, not yesterday, well, he was buried yesterday following brain complications in that surgery. The veteran died at the age of 87, just 6 months before his 88th birthday.
Through the streets of Johannesburg, clad in the ANC's green, black and gold flag, the body of the man who said he would die an ANC member.
Last year, the positive was that the number dropped, with more than 8,700 primary and high school pupils falling pregnant. 4,366 of them were here in Gauteng alone. Now, earlier this year, Public Protector Busisiwe Mgwebane pleaded with Minister Batabile's Social Development Department to intervene in the Ratlo municipality in the northwest, where around 3,000 young girls, well, fell pregnant in that municipality of around 100,000 alone. Recently, Mpumalanga High School forced girls to sign a pregnancy clause as a way of being proactive to prevent learners from falling pregnant. The DM Metsasele Secondary submitted a report to the Provincial Education Department after the act caused an uproar. Now, from the Ministry of Basic Education, we are joined by the Media Liaison Officer and Spokesperson, Troy Martins. Troy, great to have you with us.
Morning, and thanks so much for inviting me on.
It's difficult to get your head around the numbers with all these kinds of numbers floating around. Just give us a quick idea. As the department, where are you guys with regards to teenage pregnancies, and even it seems we have preteen pregnancies, which is a bit of a shocker, isn't it?
It's really concerning for us, Evan, and this is why we have just 2 weeks ago, CEM approved the management and prevention of learner pregnancy in schools policy. Now, this really looks at some of the questions that have been raised here, but the main thing for us is prevention. So it focuses a lot on sexual education, on education and family planning, about contraception, and it also looks at a school-based approach where learners can get advice on contraception from schools, and then also it takes into consideration learners who do fall pregnant to ensure that they stay in school and that they are aware and they get options on what their options are in terms of termination of pregnancy if they want to continue. So these are some of the things that are that we're looking at and that have been encapsulated in this new policy.
If we look at the thing with pregnancies amongst young women around the country, often it's made out to be it's very much a rural issue, it's very much an economic issue, and in some cases it just doesn't add up. We see in places like Gauteng the numbers the highest.
Well, I don't think we can put it in a box like that. I think that would be naive to assume that it would fit in one box and not another. I think it's something that we have to look at holistically, and that's what we've done with this policy. What's very concerning for us, though, is that with 15,000 learners that are averaging falling pregnant per year, that means that those learners are having sex without protection, first of all, when we have a huge HIV issue that we're grappling with as well, where around 2,000 girls between the ages of 15 and 24 are contracting HIV every single week. So this is why we had a lot of backlash initially when we introduced the HIV and TB policy, whereby we offer contraceptive options at schools and sexual education incorporated into the curriculum. But the fact of the matter is that learners are engaging in sexual activities, and we need to make them aware and educate them on what that means, and give them the options to either access contraception or whatever other reproductive health services and education they need.
The numbers don't lie then. 2014-15 was above 15,000. So that contraception that you've done in schools have brought the number down to around 8,700 in the last year, if one can call it that.
Well, it's a new policy still, so we don't want to jump to any conclusions and say that that's the reason. But we're confident and we're hoping that this will make some impact in trying to tackle these issues. I think prevention is obviously always better than cure. And this is why it's so important to educate learners. You know, there's been some people who've said, oh, teenagers fall pregnant to access the child support grant. Our research shows that this is not the case. And in most cases, learners fall pregnant because they just don't know the intricacies of will you fall pregnant on your first time of engaging in sexual intercourse. So these are the types of things that we need to make learners aware of, and that falling pregnant and contracting HIV are a reality of having unsafe sex.
Now, we've seen the story around the pregnancy clause at Mpumalanga school. So how do you view this pregnancy clause that was put forward to learners there?
I'm not particularly aware of the particular details of the clause, but I think that it may be a way of creating an awareness. And I think to be able to talk openly with learners about these things is very important. For example, in one school, I'm not sure which province it was, they actually got learners who had fallen pregnant and did have children to come and talk to the other learners about the experience and what it meant, and that it was a very, very difficult experience. And it gave these learners insight into the reality of having a child as a teenager.
Now, we're running a poll, of course, as always. We try and put the tough questions up to our viewers, and we want to run it by you as well today. We've got two questions. We've got the question on the poll. This is, should pregnant learners be allowed in South African school? We've got around 2/3 saying yes, with a third saying no, of almost 200 votes in. How do you as the department view that and a sort of way forward?
Well, the Constitutional Court has ruled on that. And they've said that the right to basic education is a fundamental right in our Constitution. And you cannot turn a learner away because they're pregnant. Our new policy emphasizes this as well. And it says that learners who fall pregnant need to be able to come to school. And the schools need to be able to, like I said, give them advise them on the support that they need to access, whether it be prenatal or antenatal. And they have the right to come back to school as soon as they're ready, and they get the go-ahead from a medical practitioner after they've had the baby. Another thing that's interesting to note is that learners who have a child and come back to school are less likely to have multiple births. Those learners who don't go back to school end up having more children. That's what the research tells us. So we would encourage learners to come back to school.
One of the shocking statistics that come out, and I think parents, more than 100 grade 3s, for instance, in the last year, have fallen pregnant. That's 9-year-old girls are falling pregnant. So we asked the question, what do you do, or what should we do, or how do we come to terms with this kind of thing, and what do we do with adults? That's the question on the screen there, is that what action should be taken against adults who impregnate school-going children? And we should add they're as young as 9, because more than 100 of them are around 9 years old.
Well, that's abuse. It's a criminal offence. It's rape. It's statutory rape, no matter what the circumstances. And those people need to face the full might of the law. As the Department of Education, we have encouraged principals and teachers to report such cases to police for investigation, because if a 9-year-old child is falling pregnant, I mean, there is a criminal offence taking place somewhere there, because it's very unlikely that a 9-year-old boy can make a 9-year-old girl pregnant. So that is definitely a case of abuse, and that needs to be investigated by the police, and those people must go to jail.
Do we have a crisis in South Africa in conclusion?
Well, I think if you couple it with the HIV statistics of new infections of young girls, I think young girls between the ages of 15 and 25 are very much at risk. And I would say that we have a severe problem with regards to that. And this is what makes this policy, and coupled with the HIV and TB policy, so important, and what makes education of young girls so important.
Well, Troy, before I let you go, let's just have a look with me at some of the tweets that people are sending in. Maybe you can comment on it. Here we have Dipansu. Dipansu says, Newsroom, they must go to jail. What are they doing with kids?
I have to agree with that.
This one from Alex, he says, adults should be charged with rapists. This is regarded as children. Yes, Alex, that's what we tell ourselves, but what's happening sometimes is a little bit different. Malibongwe says, any adult who impregnates a child should be arrested and be sentenced to jail. In the rural areas, we have issues where families make arrangements, financial arrangements, for this kind of thing to go away. Lungisani Mapasa says, this sugar dads are destroying the future of our children. They must be arrested. That is a point. The blessing phenomenon, Troy, is really a problem, isn't it?
It really is. And some of the statistics that we have available to us show us that of these schoolgirls that are falling pregnant, only around 15% of them are impregnated by boys of school-going age.
What percentage?
15.
15%?
Yes.
Wow.
So that means the majority of these girls are having sexual intercourse with people that are, with boys or men, with men essentially, who are out of school. And the HIV statistics mirror that phenomenon, because you have the biggest cohort of new infections are with girls, like I've said, between 14 and 25. And then the biggest infection rate of men are in an older cohort. Yeah. And then those men, that's when the young girls that have been sleeping with older men, then when they get older, they sleep with men their own age, infect them, and the cycle, it's a vicious cycle.
It's a vicious cycle. Well, we've got to get on top of all of it. Troy, thanks for coming in today.
Thank you so much.
Talking to us. Troy Martin is the Media Liaison Officer and spokesperson for the Department of Basic Education here in South Africa. We'll move on now, but keep on tweeting us at SABC Newsroom. What do we do with this phenomenon? What do we do with older men who impregnate girls as young as 9, 10, 11 years old? What do you think? Anyhow, this is what's on social media right now. Let's have a look at where we are. We'll start with the Finance Minister. The hashtag is Pravin Gordhan. Yesterday he received a standing ovation, of course, at the funeral of Ahmed Kathrada that brought him to tears. This in light, of course, of an overseas trip that was shortened, and him having to return to South Africa to face legal arguments of why he could not intervene in the matter between the banks and Gupta Link companies. Of course, there are also reports that the ANC's top 6 are undecided over whether there should be a reshuffle, as has been mooted in the media. Then yesterday, of course, it was a sad day for South Africa, as many bid a final farewell to struggle icon and stalwart Ahmed Kathrada, as well as veteran actor, of course, Joe Mafella. Dignitaries and many politicians attended both the funerals. This written story sums it all up. It says, show me another country where the Anglican Archbishop prays at a Muslim funeral, where a white man chairs the proceedings to remember a leader from a black liberation movement, where a sitting president of a developing country is told to step down in a letter from the deceased stalwart of his own party, where the widow of the man being buried is a white woman who gave her life to the struggle for freedom, and where a Christian, Muslim, Jewish, Hindu and other faiths come together in a broad swathe of South African humanity to remember a man who fought for all of us, where on and off the stage no one racial or ethnic or religious group dominated the event. For a moment, just a moment, it felt good to hope again. Of course, those words are attributed to Professor Jonathan Jansen, I have to add. Then, of course, many paid a final farewell to Joe Mafella, the much-loved veteran actor. But all the talk is about his tombstone. There you see a big flat-screen TV on the tombstone there. Just look at this fancy piece of work. There you see the picture. There's also a bench from where you can sit. All of this carved, I must tell you, in stone in the shape of a TV with lots of fine detail. Betty says, grave sites are now becoming museums. Of course, the irony, of course, was the wooden box that Ahmed Kathrada was buried in a very simple ceremony right opposite it. Of course, in other news, abroad, there's that. Footballer Cristiano Ronaldo now has his own statue at an airport. This horrific thing was unveiled yesterday. Well, at the renaming of the Madeira International Airport, it's now going to be called the Cristiano Ronaldo Airport, but it doesn't quite look as dashing as you expect it to be. Yeah, it's a bit of a mismake of Cristiano. I'm sure he's not very, very happy. Yeah, what do you think about that statue? Anyhow, let's take a look at our picture of the day now. This one comes from Gulshani, and it's captioned, Heavy Shoulders, Kathrada Funeral. If we go full screen, you'll see the family members, of course, the Kathrada family. Well, the giant is now on their shoulders as he goes to final resting place. Our comment of the day comes from Tando Tabuti, who says, I've never been to such a sad yet joyous funeral. He managed to make a smile even in death, of course, talking about the funeral of the legendary Joe Mafella. Now, let's have a look at what's on what's happening before the courts today. We'll start here in Johannesburg, where Sia Mabitsela is expected to be sentenced after being found guilty on 76 counts of rape, assault and robbery. He's one of two men dubbed the Alexandra Balaclava serial rapist. His co-accused cannot be named as he's not yet pleaded to these charges against him. Mabitsela's victims were aged between as young as 13 and 38 years old at the time these rapes occurred. Most of the attacks happened in cemeteries and at filling stations. Now, still in Johannesburg, the three men who raped two women and killed their husbands in Rhodes Park, they're expected to be sentenced in the High Court today. Admond Lovu, Tabu Nkala and Mduduzi Matibela Lawrence were found guilty of robbery, 2 counts of rape and 2 counts of murder. Down in the Cape in Parow, a suspended state prosecutor facing charges of child pornography and sexual assault. He is expected back in the regional court. They will keep you updated on all these stories on this very platform. We're going to take a short break. Well, when we come back, we'll talk a little bit more about the teenage pregnancy phenomenon here in South Africa. Don't go away.
Technology is all around us and some can't live without it.
There's also the problem of internet connectivity.
I was speaking to a robot.
It also makes a few governments panic and therefore they block the internet from time to time.
They just banned the internet, which is the source of my livelihood.
For African technology and social media news, join me, Phumelele Zondi, on Network every Sunday at 7:30 p.m. Central African Time.
Water-wise, water is an essential need. The scarcity of it could lead to loss of many lives, including livestock, plants, and much more. It requires us to use it sparingly and responsibly in times of need, failing which our taps and sanitation will not function. For more on water and weather issues, stay tuned to News Today, every Friday at 4:45 Central African Time. SABC News, making you water-wise.
Welcome back. We continue on our quest to find out about teenage pregnancies in South Africa. Now, the Department of Basic Education is concerned about the rate of pregnancies in South African schools. The Basic Education Minister, Angie Motshekga, says that the rate of pregnancies at schools has become a major social challenge, not only for the education sector, but also, more importantly, for national development. In 2009, the department commissioned the Human Research Sciences Council to conduct research on teenage pregnancies among school-going learners. And most teen pregnancies happened then between the ages of 17 and 19. The HSRC researcher, Professor Monde Makiwana, now joins us in the studio. Very good morning to you, Prof, and welcome.
Good morning, sir.
First and foremost, talk to me about your research and what you found.
Well, we find quite a lot of things. But most importantly, we found that being at school is not a risk factor for being pregnant. Many people, they see physically pregnant girls, they think that being at school makes girls to be pregnant, but we found that more girls leave school and fall pregnant than girls who fall pregnant and leave school. So being at school is not a risk of falling pregnant, unlike a popular view. But a girl that is at school is visible to the public and can be seen, whereas a girl that is not at school is not visible to the public and cannot be seen. And what used to be the case before the Education Act was changed is that girls who fall pregnant, they simply vanish from school and nobody worries about them. Perhaps it's presumed that she might have fallen from school, so it was not a worry of the public nor of the school system. But now they are visible, they are seen in school uniform being pregnant, and people worry about, which is not necessarily a bad thing because it makes the problem visible to the public and it makes them to take actions to prevent it.
What are some of the contributing factors to these girls falling pregnant, Professor, have you found?
There are a number of factors that contribute to girls falling pregnant. One of them is inequality in society. People who are poor in an affluent society react differently to people who are poor in a poor society. We find that, for instance, African Americans in America would behave differently to Africans in poor society in general. So being poor in an affluent society. But there are now other factors related specifically to school. For instance, we found that, for instance, schools where there are both old and young children in the school system, like schools where a school starts from primary up to high school, you find that there are more pregnant girls in such a school than a school of just primary kids. So age mixing might be a factor. And of course, as already been said, many of these school children, they get pregnant because of adult men, some of which, unfortunately, it's sorry to tell, are teachers, are male teachers.
Now, Angie Motshekga refers to the situation on being a major social challenge for the national development of our country. What impact would this have on our economy?
Well, it has got an impact because in spite of the Schools Act saying that schools must not expel pregnant girls, and a pregnant girl once have given birth is allowed to return to school, we know that as much as 50% of girls who fall pregnant don't return to school. So those girls will contribute to those who don't have skills to enter the economy and contribute to unemployment rate. So it's a major problem in our society.
Yes. Did you find a correlation between pregnancy among learners at school and social grants?
Well, this issue we investigated thoroughly because before we conducted the research, almost everybody believed that girls are falling pregnant because of social grants. We find that there is no correlation at all. I'll just mention some of the factors that convince us that there's no correlation. First of all, many people thought that girl pregnancy increased after the introduction of social grants.
Yes.
We find that that is not the case. It has been declining, and the decline did not stop after the introduction of social grants. This includes in rural areas. While rural areas, pregnancy is still high, but it has also been declining. Secondly, we found that very few teenagers access the social grants. In most of the cases, the social grants are accessed by grandparents of teenagers. Then you ask the question, if the girl fell pregnant because of social grants, why is she not jumping to access those social grants?
Yes.
Why is she allowing her mother to access in order to take care of her own baby? Of course, there are other factors which we looked at.
What were some of the recommendations that you've put forward coming from your report?
Well, the recommendations is that there must be cooperation between parents and teachers to prevent the scourge of teenage pregnancy. What prevents that working hand in hand between parents and teachers is because there's often an ideological divide between the two. Teachers would take their cue from the national government, which encourages an expansive approach, which like abstinence and contraceptive use, whereas many parents are guided either by their faith or by tradition to stick strictly to abstinence. We are saying that in spite of this divide, they can cooperate and just have rules of engagement, and parents continue to encourage abstinence while teachers continue to advocate for an expansive approach. Abstinence, if you cannot abstain, please use contraceptive.
So your approach is really prevention is better than cure.
Yes.
Professor, thank you so much for your time and joining us here in studio.
Thank you so much.
That was Professor Monde Matiwane from the HSRC talking to us about the research on pregnancy focusing on school learners. Now, we'll take a look at what your comments are about the question that we posed to you, as well as the comments, as well as the poll that we're conducting. Let's go over to Evan.
Yeah, thanks, Albus. A very good morning. If you've just joined us here on Newsroom, we'll be with you until midday, and we've been running a poll and a question. Let's look at the poll first, because you guys have been voting, and we're talking about teenage pregnancies today. Now, the question is a somewhat controversial one. Should pregnant learners be allowed in South African schools? Now, we heard a little bit earlier that it is a constitutional right of all to go to school, even if you're pregnant. Now, more than 200 of you have voted, and the majority of you agree with this, that yes, they should be allowed in schools and their rights should not be infringed upon. Let's have a look at what you guys are tweeting us here with regards to this. Blessing Chokera comes in and says, Newsroom, no, they must not allow those kind of students because they will spoil some of the other students. But Blessing, yes, it is a democratic right of all people, to constitutional right actually, to get your schooling. Barry Martin says, yes, pregnant learners should be allowed in South African schools. Nobody's perfect. We all do mistakes. Don't judge them. A very sober view there from Barry. Thank you for that one. Rennie says, one of the few ways to reduce teen pregnancy is by building sporting facilities or afternoon activities to the kids, says Rennie. Yes, it is. It is shown, especially amongst boys. Keeping them on the sports field really helps them with what they do. Of course, this one from Sipo, he says, no, if a scholar is pregnant, she must stay at home. Simple as that, and take care of herself. A boy father must go look for a job. Sipo, that's very tough constitutionally not. And Paul comes to us, he says, teen pregnancy is a problem in South Africa. Sex exposure must be stopped in the media. Yes, that's part of the problem that we see. Now, let's move on and take a look. Don't forget to tweet us on that question, of course. We're also asking if adults that make young girls, some as young as 9 years old, make them pregnant, what should happen to them? That's the question. What action should be taken against adults who impregnate school-going children? Tough question, but that's what it is. Up to 109 grade 3 learners fell pregnant. 109 9-year-olds. Let's have a look what you say on that before we move on. Dipansu says they must go to jail. What are they doing with kids? Harsh but fair. That's a feeling I think that many have. Alex says adults should be charged with rape as this regards children. And then Malibongwe says any adult who impregnates a child should be arrested and be sentenced to jail. Tough, but that's what you guys are telling us. Now, let's move on quickly and take a look at some of the front pages from around the globe. Now, we'll start in New York. The Wall Street Journal reports that the United Kingdom formally began the process of exiting from the European Union, starting an unprecedented path to reshape its relationship with its closest allies. We'll talk to Professor Parsons next about that. Then, moving to Australia, the Australian says wind gusts of up to 100 kilometers per hour forecast as Brisbane is hit by flash flooding and the Navy plans an evacuation. Finally, in China, the South China Morning Post reports that a US diplomat who allegedly took tens of thousands of dollars in cash and gifts from Chinese intelligence agents was charged with lying to investigators over the content. Now, let's go to our Facebook page quickly and have a look at what you can see there. Parliament spokesperson Moloto Matapo says they will submit a report to the Speaker of the National Assembly to determine appropriate course of action following death threats against a member of the House. We also see the Western Cape Department of Agriculture has set aside 47 million rand for drought relief there. Economic opportunities. MEC Alan Wild says one of the biggest threats facing the economy is the impact of extreme weather conditions. Now, the province is suffering from the worst drought in recent times. Finally, reports of students going hungry on campuses. You know, here in South Africa are rife. This as many as 200,000 university students have still not received their NSFAS grants. All of those and more on our Facebook page. That's a disturbing story. Go leave us a comment if you want. Now, of course, Brexit is getting into high gear and it's going to affect all of us, the pocket, that is. Let's go over to Arvis and Professor Parsons to give us a look as to what yesterday will mean to you and me.
That's right, Eben. The clock is ticking, that 2-year clock ticking on Britain's departure from the European Union. It is continuing as we speak. Let's see if we can get millions of EU citizens living in the UK who are facing an uncertain future to get some clarity on that. British Prime Minister Theresa May insisted after triggering Article 50 of the Lisbon Treaty on Wednesday that it was an historic moment from which there can be no turning back. Now, to help us unpack these issues, we're joined by Professor Raymond Parsons of the Northwest University School of Business and Governance. A very good morning to you, Professor, and welcome.
Good morning, Elvis.
She took the gun, she fired it, she triggered Article 50. Your thoughts?
Well, Elvis, you referred to an historical moment. Let me press the rewind button. Now, the United Kingdom in 1975 had a referendum on should they join the EU, and there was more than a 2/3 majority in favour. But a very substantial minority were not in favour, and that minority has now converted itself into a majority in that forward button, which I'm now pressing, for the referendum last year in June, whereby 52% to 48%, there was a decision that they want to have a Brexit. I think the important features are that the then Prime Minister David Cameron didn't expect to lose, and his opponents didn't expect to win. Therefore, you found that the United Kingdom was very unprepared for this decision, and they still are not well prepared, although they've been trying to do a lot of homework in the last few months. Hence the 9 months lapse. Now that clause 50 is being triggered, and we know that the big issues are political, economic, but for particularly social. That the big debate in that last referendum was in fact the issue not of the free movement of goods and services or of capital, but of people. That was the big challenge, and that is what really tipped the scales in that last referendum. And now the formal process, as you've indicated, of negotiation has begun between the EU and the United Kingdom.
Now, talking about that negotiation process, what does that entail, and what sort of mood can we expect coming from those particular meetings?
Well,
how will it be conducted?
I think you will have noticed that in the last few days there have been very friendly messages being exchanged prior to the signing and the delivery of this letter, which went to Brussels, of course.
This divorce letter you're talking about.
Yeah, that's right. And let me say immediately, this is going to be one of the most expensive and complicated divorces that we've seen. But the point is, rather like two boxers who in fact shake hands before the big fight. So I think that's where we are, because this is going to be a very tough game, a very tough negotiation with a lot of uncertainty around it. And we must also understand that although we talk formally, and indeed the treaty talks about a 2-year period, I've not met any expert who thinks that this can be dealt with in 2 years. It's going to take longer. For example, there are at least 7,000 laws and regulations in the United Kingdom that either have to be withdrawn or have to be amended or have to be consolidated into the British system. There are all sorts of other aspects of this omelette that has to be unscrambled, which are enormously complicated, partly because neither the EU nor the United Kingdom has ever experienced anyone who is withdrawing from the common market. So this is a very steep learning curve with a lot of uncertainty around it for all the participants.
Now, there have been several economic scenarios that was outlined of the possible impact of the UK economy in the event of a hard Brexit, and they also talk about a soft Brexit. How do you read the tea leaves in the UK scenario and the economy there?
Well, there have been quite a lot of scenarios offered on what the ultimate economic impact will be after a few years, once there's a deal or there's no deal. You must remember that the UK Prime Minister said, rather no deal than a bad deal. That means a hard Brexit if they end up outside the common market. We also don't know whether by then, what will the position be of Scotland? Will the internal British market begin to get divisive? So that's another big uncertainty there. So the important point here is that there are forecasts which indicate over the next few years that even under what I call a best case scenario, there would still be a negative growth rate for the United Kingdom, because their economy, with the best will in the world, will be smaller and will be a smaller player. So the important point here is that we must understand that there will be some shrinkage in the global economy, much, at least in the British economy, but much depending on what the final deal is. If there is a good deal for both sides, then obviously there'll be a soft landing. But remember also that the EU doesn't also know how quite to play this. Do they want a hard landing or a soft landing, bearing in mind that they don't want this to be a precedent for other players to say, well, if you are going to give the UA a soft landing, why shouldn't we also opt out? So there's a lot at stake here for those countries, and it's a high-risk exercise.
Talking about at stake, what about South Africa? How at risk are we with this Brexit, whether it's hard, soft, or in between?
Well, I saw a headline today, Brexit makes South Africa unhappy and uncertain. Well, I think there are other things this week that are going to make us unhappy and uncertain, rather than, of course, Brexit. This is a slow-burning fuse. It may take 2 years, it may take longer. We must understand that all the existing arrangements between South Africa and the EU and Britain stay in place until there's a final sign-off. But we must use this time wisely in 3 ways. Firstly, we must monitor the situation. We must look at what are our options. There are risks and opportunities. What are the options if we should have to diversify our economy into other markets later on? Secondly, we must consult those sectors that may gain or lose as a result of the ultimate change. And finally, in 2 or 3 years' time, whatever the outcome, we must ensure that our economy is competitive enough to take advantage of whatever new situation there is after Brexit.
Now, the Reserve Bank Monetary Policy Committee, now this is away from Brexit, but it's a very important story because today they expected to announce their decision on interest rates today. Now, the question is to raise or to cut rates, Professor?
Well, Elvis, last week you and I discussed this, and we said we saw some doves in the tree, but we didn't think they would fly out just yet. In other words, we thought that we had now reached the peak in our interest rates. There was a strong rand, and we look at inflation also sort of leveling off. We felt that at least there'll be some dove-like noises. I think the events of this week will scrub that out. What we can hope for today is that those doves have simply flown away. And what I think the Reserve Bank is going to do, without being political, but simply say, look, there's still too much uncertainty now, and we'll have to sit tight with where we are with our interest rates. So I suspect and I expect that they will have a no change as to the level of interest rates, and they will point to the issues of uncertainty as an important factor in that decision.
Final thought, Professor.
Well, I just think coming back to Brexit, I think we must also, like the British, begin to do our homework. We've got time in hand, and as I said earlier, let's use that time wisely to prepare ourselves for all sorts of scenarios that might unfold, so that once the time arrives, we'll know what we have to do as a trading nation.
Professor Parsons, thank you so much for your time and joining us here in studio. Professor Parsons will join us tomorrow on Friday morning for the economy. And we'll unpack those issues that he was talking about, the circumstances that happened this week in terms of the MPC decision, and we'll also look at the MPC decision at the end. That was economist Professor Raymond Parsons from the Northwest University School of Business, the SBG. We'll take a break and we'll be back.
A presumed U.S. drone strike in the south of the country has killed 3 al-Qaeda suspects.
Death toll in Yemen's 18-month-old civil war now stands at about 10,000.
People get killed or die and are actually buried before they're recorded. And we don't have a way of recording that, but we know the numbers are much higher.
Water restrictions are to be imposed on villages in and around the Nkomazi municipality.
Pumps can't pump the water because there's no water in a river. And if the water is coming back, then it's full of mud.
Those who can pray and those who can do any miracle to make sure that we've got enough rain, give it a try.
A conscious move from being a street kid to being a barrister of note.
Keep on praying for me to make a better life.
A creative application of the mind on an essential need, water in wheelbarrow containers.
How about if we come up with an idea of an enclosed container that sits on top of the frame of a wheelbarrow?
With the sharing of resources, a boy with Russell Silver syndrome receives medication.
The fact that you just said to me, well, you're covered for next month, that's amazing.
So that's the medication.
For more inspiring stories, stay tuned to Bupilong every Friday.
This Ford Cougar thing is becoming a hot potato for them, excuse the pun.
U.S. car maker Ford has finally admitted that a fault is causing some of its Ford Cougar SUVs to catch fire, and it also formally issued a recall in South Africa. Ford
needs to take accountability.
We'll work with our dealers and try to come up with a way that satisfies them.
Now this is Trends, of course, your one-stop serving of all that's juicy and trending in the world of entertainment and showbiz. My name, of course, is Refiwe Mwilo.
I'm Dr. Sello Mutaung, and this is Health Talk.
A very good morning and welcome to Media Monitor. I'm your host, Alicia Jolly.
My name is Dumila Matters.
What time is it? It's question time.
For your daily dose of current affairs, tune in to the SABC News Channel.
Welcome back. Very good morning to you. Just gone 10 o'clock. That is Central African time. If you're watching us anywhere else in the world, of course, our focus today. Very good morning to you, Kendall.
Good morning. Good morning,
Before I get on, Kendall Mahamati, of course, is with me. He'll be on the sports desk and bring us an update. We'll also talk about the Protea shortly. But the focus this morning thus far has been on the 2015 annual school survey. That shows more than 15,000 pupils fell pregnant in the last year. Well, that number came down to about 8,700 primary and high school pupils, mind you, falling pregnant. So we've been asking the question. A lot of those are as young as 9 years old. What action should be taken against adults who impregnate school-going children? Kendall, what do you make of that as a father? And secondly, let's have a look
Truly
at
shocking, and incredibly disturbing. Elvis said it a little earlier, and Barry Martin is also coming in with saying adults who impregnate school-going children should be charged with rape, sentence them, and place names under the Children's Act.
Name them, shame them, and punish them, he says. Puti Bankosi says, let both be punished because none of them tried to prevent the situation. Well, what does a 12-year-old know, Puti, in the end?
Well, Supo comes in with these adults must face the music and be exposed to the public. They are a disgusting factor. A punishment is a punishment.
Expose them, he says. Lungisanio Abaso says, this sugar dads, and that's part of the problem, the blesser phenomenon. The sugar dads are destroying the future of our children. They must be arrested, he says.
Even I'll tell you what, one of the big things about it is that if it's not done properly, if proper punishment is not meted out, you'll end up having people like yourself and me taking the law into our own hands.
Oh yes, I certainly will if it was my daughter, no doubt about that. Anyhow, we're running a poll, and that poll deals with this. So we're asking you on the poll, should pregnant learners, taking it back to them, should they be allowed in school? 221 votes in. 2/3 are saying yes. And like we can say, it's a constitutional right to go to school, so 100%. You can't take even pregnant children out of school.
It's a punishment. Why take them out of school?
Yeah. So we're asking you, and you tweeting us. Barry comes back. He says, pregnancy. Yes, pregnant learners should be allowed in South African schools. Nobody's perfect. We all make mistakes. Don't judge them. Thank you, Barry. Sobering view there.
Rennie says one of the few ways to reduce teen pregnancy is by building sporting facilities or afternoon activities for the kids.
Very important, especially young boys need physical activity. And latest research shows if they do physical activity, they do better in school. They concentrate better. How's that?
Absolutely. Sipo comes in with no. If a scholar is pregnant, she must stay at home. Simple as that, and take care of herself. A boy father must go look for a job.
That's harsh. Mpo says teenage pregnancy is a problem in South Africa. Sex exposure must be stopped in the media, but it's available everywhere, even on the streets. You can buy for R5, you can buy a DVD with some of the nastiest nasty you'll ever see.
If you don't have a smartphone, children know they can go to any street corner and buy a DVD.
Yeah, we all wanted to learn, you all want to know. That is the kind of issues that we all face as human beings. Anyhow, time now for us to go and have a look at the top stories at this hour. Details of last night's highly charged cabinet meeting in Pretoria are expected to be released a little bit later today. the South African Communist Party. Now, they are scheduled to hold a media briefing shortly. We'll be live in a few minutes. Then the Reserve Bank's Monetary Policy Committee will announce its decision on interest rates later today. Those are the top stories right now. Let's go over to Kendall for more news.
Thank you very much, Evan. Good morning to you. This is what we've got planned for you for this morning's sporting news. South Africa's Proteas end the year on a high, finishing second on the ICC Test rankings after starting the season in 7th.
We have a lot of exciting things. I can tell you now, we're speaking to international sponsors and local sponsors have shown interest. They've approached us, we never approached them.
Just a week after posting a 23 million rand loss for the year 2016, SARU announced that FlySafair has taken over from SAA as their domestic carrier. And less than 3 years after being relegated from top flight football in the PSL, iconic club Morocco Swallows get the drop into amateur football. Now, all this and more I'll be bringing to you a little later on now for sure, but for now, do stay with us because Evan has got the news.
Yeah, thank you very much, Kendall. Of course, the nation on tenterhooks because of this story, and this is just the latest reports, and that are that the ANC's top 6 are split over whether Finance Minister Pravin Gordhan should be sacked. Details of a highly charged cabinet meeting in Pretoria are expected to be released later today. Now, cabinet met at the Union Buildings last night amid reports that President Jacob Zuma was on the verge of axing the finance minister. Pravin Gordhan says he will remain a loyal servant of the public, even if he's axed. He was speaking, of course, at the funeral of Ahmed Kathrada, where he received a standing ovation. The Reserve Bank's Monetary Policy Committee is expected to announce its decisions on interest rates later today. South Africa's rand and bonds extended losses on Wednesday amid speculation of an imminent cabinet shake-up that could see Finance Minister Pravin Gordhan removed. Now we go back to our theme today. Teaching sexual and HIV and AIDS education in schools has been the subject of debate and discussion for a while here in South Africa. The debates have mainly centered around 3 key issues. At what stage to introduce it? What kind of curricula is appropriate, and who is qualified to provide such teaching? Now, South Africa is one of the few countries in the region that have made attempts to introduce sexual as well as HIV and AIDS education at the secondary school level. Although this has had benefits, it has not been without its challenges, with many children becoming sexually active even before 14 years old. The Department of Basic Education's Chief Director for Care and Support in Schools, Dr. Faith Kumalo, has warned that sex education and life skills must begin as early as grade R. Now, non-governmental organization Chiva Africa says a lack of education is the root cause of this problem. Chiva Africa Country Director Juliet Harton, she joins us now in our Durban studios. A very good morning to you, Julia. Thank you for being with us. Just give us your reaction. We've seen this pregnancy clause at a school in Mpumalanga that's caused a bit of a stir. Give us your reaction to the pregnancy clause that young people were asked to sign before starting the school year, and then also talk to us about your organization. You've singled out the lack of sexual education in South African schools as a contributing factor to learner pregnancies.
Thank you and good morning. I think that what we are finding with our work with young people and in schools is that the education is not for everybody. And with the contracts that are being signed, I don't think that that's a new phenomenon in South Africa. It's probably not hit the headlines before, but talking to colleagues and friends in KwaZulu-Natal who are now beyond school years, a number of those young women were also signing contracts maybe 5-10 years ago. So the concept of signing non-pregnancy clauses is not a new phenomenon. But what I think is missing here is the education of everybody, and are these signings actually informed consent? If we can get informed consent from young people, and I don't mean just girls, but also the boys and their families, then that'll speak more to the comprehensive sexuality education that we want to see in schools. And you speak rightly about the challenges of actually implementing that within the schools and beyond, because I think communities and families play a critical role in how young people grow and develop and behave. And part of that is through what they witness in communities and homes, but also what they learn and how they're supported. So I think the education component has a long way to go, but there are some good programs in place to start to address this.
Do we introduce sex education as early as grade R and in primary schools?
I think people will suddenly react to that very negatively and think, what on earth are we doing? But I think if we think about sexuality education more broadly, one of the key components that we're struggling with is the rights of the individual to have choices and to protect their own body. And I think that children, even in grade R, are in a really good position to understand that this is my body. Nobody has the right to touch me in a way that I don't want or to make me do things that I don't want to do. So we can start to understand about boundaries and rights and responsibilities in very young children. So I think it's an opportunity to start those conversations younger and build those up. But also there should be a community component to this, so that families and communities are also receiving the same information and education which they wouldn't have had the opportunity to get when they were at school.
Now, Juliet, how do you begin to address this kind of issue when here in South Africa sex is still regarded as taboo in many communities, and how do you then leave that to the schools?
I think that's a really important point, that we mustn't leave this to the schools. I think the comprehensive sexuality education plan for schools is great. I'm not sure how comfortable and confident teachers are at implementing that, because teachers obviously don't live in a bubble. They're also members of communities and have their own beliefs and values and traditions. And so working with teachers to help them to understand that whilst they can hold those values and beliefs as personal, they must also be able to provide the education that young people need. And then secondly, to engage parents and communities more broadly to understand the impact of not educating children. I think sex is taboo generally in many countries around the world and in many cultures, but adolescent sexuality particularly raises a lot of moral and ethical objections. But I think by the fact that we have so many teenage pregnancies, using moral arguments to not open up discussions is not going to resolve the problem for these young women, both now and for the country more broadly in the future.
What would you say is the root cause behind the high levels of teen pregnancy? I know you can't say it's one thing, but if you can give us a picture of what you as an organization think is behind the high numbers of teenage pregnancies in South Africa.
Yes, you're right. I think it's really difficult to say that it's the one key thing. I do think that poverty still is a huge factor. Not in terms of, I think that was cleared up quite nicely by the previous speaker from the HSRC, that it's not about getting social grants. It's not a poverty issue in that way. It's about access to employment and hopes for the future and opportunities, and the ability to stay well and make informed choices for young people today. We work a lot with HIV and sexual health together, because both of them are driven by the same issues. And whilst we have very good policies and guidelines from all of our different sectors, they need to work together to address this. Teenage pregnancy is not an education challenge any more than HIV is just a health challenge. It's about addressing these collectively with communities, and of course, I think critically here with the young people themselves. What do they think are the reasons why the pregnancies are occurring, and what would they like to see in place to change that?
The girl child has to be empowered, obviously. That's the one of the, well, pretty much at the heart of the matter, as you just pointed out. How do we do that? How do we change that mindset here in South Africa?
I think that part of the way, excuse me, of changing the girl mindset, if you will, is also changing the boy mindset. Because these girls, frankly, are not impregnating themselves. Whilst we know that a lot of sexual relationships are happening with older men, that's not an exclusive relationship. They're also having relations with their peers. And so working with young men as well to help them to understand how their attitudes and values and behaviours impact on the abilities of young women to make informed choices is also critical. And ensuring that young men feel valued and have an opportunity to also develop and succeed at education, find employment, so on and so forth, is equally important. So I think the empowerment is more of a community approach rather than simply focusing on young women, because as much as they can become very empowered and very knowledgeable, that can be taken away quite easily from them.
Juliet, great stuff. Thank you very much for joining us. That's the Achieve Africa Country Director, Juliet Harton. She was talking to us about, well, teenage pregnancy here in South Africa, live from our studios in Durban. Now, of course, we've been running a poll on teenage pregnancy with regards to that. Also, we've been asking you a question: should pregnant learners be allowed in South African schools? That's the poll we've been running with more than 220 votes in. 67% of those 221 of you that have voted are telling us that yes, they should be allowed to do so. Of course, we're also asking you a question. The question of the day really is: what action should be taken against adults who impregnate school-going children? Well, we can tell you, as young as grade 3, 109 grade 3 learners have fallen pregnant. We're going to take a couple of tweets on that question of the day. Of course, we invite you to tweet us. Tell us what you think. We are all parents. We are all South Africans. We are all in this together. Tweet us. Tell us what you think. I know it's an emotive, it's an emotive issue. Alex Motapo says no learners should learn and leave pregnant for adults. Offense says pregnancy doesn't mean the learner's rights to education must be violated and being able to better their lives. Yes, we all make mistakes, Offense says, that's the fact. Charles says pregnancy is nature's, because it's natural and bound to happen, whether at school or anything. We cannot punish them for that. Yes, but we must teach them to behave naturally a little bit later in life, maybe. William Slesabe says schools are not pre-mothers assembly, and it will promote students' pregnancies, says Williams. Lechasa comes and says, I don't see a problem at all. They never raped them, but they agreed to each other. So what's the problem? The problem is some of them are underage, Lechasa. That is statutory rape. If a 9-year-old girl falls pregnant, well, then the father of that child should, by right, go to prison. Well, Kasatu, or not Kasatu, the SACP, they're about ready to start that live press conference. Before we do that, let's just let's take a look at the live pictures actually and see where they are. You know, these things are always a little bit late. Okay, these we haven't got signed through yet. This is the live picture coming from Kasatu House. As you can see, the SACP, well, they are about ready to start a press conference there. Okay, according to Aldrin, who's just let us know, well, they're still waiting for 1 or 2 late arrivals. While we wait for them, let's go back to the news before we go there. Now, late struggle stalwart Ahmed Kathrada was laid to rest at Heroes Acre at the West Park Cemetery yesterday. Kathrada died on Tuesday from complications following brain surgery. Now, the veteran activist died at the age of 87, just 6 months before his 88th birthday.
Through the streets of Johannesburg, clad in the ANC's green, black and gold flag, the body of the man who said he would die an ANC member. It should then come as no surprise that his agony over the state of the party would be highlighted at his send-off, more explicitly through quoting his letters sent to President Jacob Zuma last year on the 31st of March.
And bluntly, if not arrogantly, in the face of such persistently widespread criticism, condemnation and demand, is it asking too much to express the hope that you will choose the correct way that is gaining momentum to consider stepping down?
While there were 2 former presidents, the incumbent was absent. President Zuma said in a statement in which he praised Kathrada, it was the family's wish that he not attend the funeral or the memorial, albeit this would seem to be the start of reflection in the alliance.
At a time when parasitic patronage networks are today seeking to capture our movement for their narrow interests. As the SACP, in memory of Comrade Kathy and in defense of our revolution, we say no to those intentions. And we will continue to say no, no, no.
We must separate leaders from the organization. Leaders will come and go, but organization will remain. And it says, no matter how popular you may be, but never for a moment understood that you are bigger than the organization.
I want to appeal to all veterans of our movement who are here to appreciate that they have a responsibility of guiding us and many other generations of leaders who will come. That is not an option. It's a responsibility of providing that guidance.
But as Kathrada's fellow comrades express their sense of loss, probably worst hit is his wife, Barbara Hogan, and the family.
Especially to Barbara. Thank you for coming to our family, for sharing Kathy with us, for being his companion and wife. You will always be a special part of our family and our lives.
The pain may be deep, but his legacy will probably heal the wounds of a nation in mourning. Aldrin St. Pierre, SABC News, Johannesburg.
Of course, there was reaction from all quarters.
Walking the same path with one mission to liberate the country. They even shared the same prison cell on Robben Island.
When I arrived at Robben Island, he asked me whether we still have a leader that can take over. I said yes, Tambo is there.
The sentiments shared by a woman who spent many years looking after the Kathrada family.
My family and I feel saddened by the loss. His family treated me like one of them and not someone who works for them.
A much younger generation of leaders also shared fond memories.
I and a number of others would like to emulate him and his life and live a humble life, a life of integrity, commitment, and a life that is full of meaning.
He didn't have children, he didn't have a dog or a cat. When he was arrested, he came back to no dog or cat, and he had to rebuild his life from scratch. And I don't know how he survived all those years. And he looked after each and every one of those who were older than him.
We say farewell, but we know that he's going to be joining a galaxy of our heroes and heroines.
We remember that we are, in whatever position we have, we're there for the masses of our people and to improve their living conditions, and so that they can all have a more dignified and better life, which is what Amar Kathrada did.
What we must learn is the sacrifice that him and many others have had to make so that we can have a taste of the freedom encapsulated in the constitutional democracy that we now enjoy, and therefore learn to also sacrifice until the values in our constitution becomes a practical reality.
Sophie Mukwena, SABC News, Johannesburg.
Meanwhile, ANC Chief Whip Jackson Mthembu says they will do everything in their power to emulate the principled Uncle Kathy.
I say that he was a man of high morality and a man of high integrity. This is what all of us must emulate as members of the ANC caucus in Parliament, but as members of the ANC generally. Here is a leader who was the embodiment of the values that the ANC stands for. We can say to him, we salute you, Comrade Kathy, And we will do everything in our power to emulate the man you were, the man you have always been, true to yourself, true to our movement, and true and honest to our country.
Of course, hundreds of mourners have bid veteran actor Joe Mafella moving farewell at his funeral in Soweto yesterday as well. The 75-year-old was laid to rest at Johannesburg's West Park Cemetery, right opposite, of course, Ahmed Kathrada. Well, we have to cut it there because it seems as if the SACP are finally ready to go live with us here on the newsroom. Let's go over there now for this anticipated press briefing.
Conference starts. I'd like to invite the second Deputy General Secretary of the SACP, Comrade Mafella, who's going to read out a prepared statement. We're making copies. We will get copies of the statement each. So the DGS will read out the press statement, and from then, as the norm, we'll take questions and proceed. We do have some requests from some of your colleagues. So at some stage, we're going to have to trade off and stop the press briefing so that we can also give the interviews that have been requested. DGS, I invite you to read out the SACP statement. Thank you for coming, ladies and gentlemen. We'll make sure next time we get a much bigger venue. Just to brief you who's here, the Deputy General Secretary, Comrade Mafella, is sitting on my immediate left, and next to him is Comrade Grace Pampiri Botman, who's a member of the Politburo of the SACP and also a member of the Central Committee. Thank you. Welcome.
Thank you very much, Comrade Maleka, and good morning to all of you. This is our statement on the discussions with the ANC. The Augmented Central Committee last year mandated the SACP to convene a national imbizo as part of our ongoing process to interact with the motive forces of the National Democratic Revolution, to deeply appreciate the challenges confronting our revolution. We wish to announce that we will be convening the National Imbizo 22nd to the 24th of April in Gauteng. We extend an invite to all progressive organizations, both political and non-political, with a vested interest in the successful execution of the second more radical phase of our national democratic revolution. Alliance partners, civil society organizations like the SACC and other MDM forces have already been issued with an invite to participate in the National Imbizo, including the veterans of the movement and the MKMVA. We invite organizations with an interest to serve in the steering committee to make contact with our offices for necessary discussions and considerations. On the political discussions with the SACP and the ANC, the SACP and the ANC have been engaged in political discussions in bilateral sessions aimed at addressing the challenges facing our revolution broadly and our movement specifically. Since last year, we have held 3 official bilateral discussions in various forms. This last Monday, our discussions continued. At the core of our discussions are the strategic questions facing our revolution, the revitalization of the National Democratic Revolution, rebuilding our connection with the key motive forces of the revolution, and dealing with subjective organizational challenges impeding our leadership role in society. It is in this context that the SACP is calling the broader national imbizo as well. Whilst we are committed to creating an enabling climate for our discussions, certain unfortunate events have taken place, placing the SACP in an untenable situation wherein it is called on publicly to set the record straight regarding confidential discussions. There has been selective and factional leaking of our discussions, breaching the confidentiality that usually accompanies such. The SACP wishes to state that, as the norm, The President informed us of his intention to effect a cabinet reshuffle, replacing both Minister and Deputy Minister of Finance. We recorded our objection to the intended reshuffle. However, after the meeting, an unfortunate selective leak to various media houses has distorted the facts. So to create a public impression, the SACP is firstly responsible for the leaks, but secondly has agreed to the actual intent or intention. The Constitution of the country accords the President of the country a responsibility to appoint cabinet. The President of the country, however, is a deployee of the ANC and has to implement ANC mandate. The ANC is in an alliance with the SACP, COSATU, and SANCO, and therefore has an obligation to consult its alliance partners in exercising political power collectively struggled for. The SACP rejects this emerging paradigm of presidential prerogative devoid of political collective oversight. The collective oversight demands of us to be frank with each other, since we are required to discharge our responsibility not merely as friends and acquaintances, but as revolutionaries with a purpose to serve and change the lives of our people for the better. The SACP is gravely concerned by the growing abuse of state security organs and their meddling in daily political lives of the country. We are aware of a rogue intelligence unit that, in our view, gathers data illegally, produces false reports, and feeds them into the political and public domain to smear comrades. We have laid a complaint with the Inspector General and the Minister of Intelligence of State Security, who thus far have treated our complaint flippantly. In this regard, we have noted a rise in apartheid-era style intimidation and harassment of activists, SACP members, and even other ANC members. The case of Comrade Makosi Khoza is another point in point. A series of suspicious events have taken place, with the latest being the reported harassment of Comrade Makosi. It appears those with other motives than that detailed in our revolutionary won't stop at anything. We have a responsibility not to allow ourselves to be run by gangsters, nor degenerate into a gangster state wherein public office bearers and officials cannot discharge their responsibilities without fear or favor. This is our brief statement. We will then take questions. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, DGS. Okay, you're gonna help me. I'm a bit rusty, so we're gonna do things properly. All right, we raised hands and then we take. So number one here, number two at the back. There's a guy. Yeah, all right. Any other hand? Tulasi. Number three. Number four. Number five. Then you, in the second round, you 1, 2, 3. He's number two. He's number two. So it's number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So you introduce yourself and
Thank you so much, Clement Manyetela from Eyewitness News. I just want to find out about, we had after the Central Executive Committee meeting, I think last month or so, the SACP didn't rule out the possibility of resigning, and I'm talking about the SACP members that are in cabinet. You didn't rule out the possibility of them resigning from cabinet in response to this imminent cabinet reshuffle. Is that still the case? Are you still considering that? And did this president specify the reasons why he wants to replace the finance minister and the deputy? And was this so-called intelligence report stated as one of the reasons? Thank you.
Okay, number two.
Okay, thank you. So that's Joe Mafella from the Mailing Guardian. I just wanted clarity. Who are the gangsters that are running yourselves? Because you say you have a responsibility not to allow yourselves to be run by gangsters. And then I wanted to find out what was the response of the SACP besides the objection to the intention to replace the finance minister? Is there any other action that you're considering? And then lastly, have you had any response from the Inspector General regarding the complaint that you made? Thank you.
Matlhatsi?
very similar to what Govan was asking in terms of the reasons, but where does the SACP stand in terms of if he does go ahead and fire Pravin Gordhan, would he be, one, justified, and number two, what do you think would be the consequences of that, not only for government, but also for the alliance and ANC in particular?
Yeah, the questions are quite similar, just a slightly different one. What is the basis of your objection to the president's intention? I mean, you acknowledge that he has the right to do this. Is it because you question his motives for doing it? And if so, could you elaborate?
Samuel Masego from Jacaranda FM News. In your discussions with the ANC, when the president raised the issue of reshuffling Pravin Gordhan and SABC Jonas, was the ANC united on this matter? Did Cyril Ramaphosa, Jesu Duarte, and all the others agree with him on his wishes to reshuffle? And do you think this reshuffling of the treasury is linked to his close relationship with the Gupta family? And was Pravin Gordhan summoned back from abroad just to only attend the Gupta court case, which the president applied to be a friend of the court with? Thank you.
Do you think it's fair that the SACP answers on behalf of the ANC?
Yes, it's fair. Within the meeting.
All right.
Is that all the first round?
That's the first round.
Okay.
So it's then it's
No,
1,
thank-
2, 3 in the second round, 4.
Thank you very much. The first one relates to whether, firstly, let me explain the principle of this engagement and why in our statement we decided to deviate from that agreed principle. The alliance is a tool of consultation. As you will know that in the Constitution, the President is vested with the powers the prerogative powers to appoint ministers and other key government appointees. But because we run a party political system, not a presidential system, we run on political basis, as is indicated in our statement. We are equally responsible for both the successes and the failures of government, the weaknesses and strengths of government and its policies. So we remain responsible for that. We take collective responsibility for it. That is why an exercise of engagement, substantive engagement, is required in the alliance. So this tool does exist. So in essence, out of consultations, we are able to discuss confidential issues affecting our revolution, which are exercised accordingly by relevant structures. That's a norm in any political situation or political organization that runs government. So it is in this regard that because of the leaks, we decided to come out this way because that confidentiality has been violated, not by us, but has been violated by comrades who then creates an impression in the media that it is us who violated that confidentiality clause. So that's the point that, just to emphasize that, that particular point. Well, from our last Central Committee, we did indicate that we will respond to this matter as and when it arises. Whether our members who are serving in government will withdraw from government or not. We have not taken that decision, largely because, first, we do not per se have party members on the list of the ANC candidate list. We have ANC members. So those members are ANC members in their own right, full right. There are no step cousins or step sisters, brothers of the ANC. They are absolute ANC members. No step cousins, no brothers or sisters of the ANC. So they stand in their own rights as ANC leaders and members, bona fide. So that's the first point. Secondly is that obviously there's no doubt that you know that, for instance, our General Secretary, Comrade Blade, is also in government and serves in cabinet. And is a well-known leader of the Communist Party. We accept that in the movement, there's a concept that creates the alliance, generally the dual membership principle, which is the cornerstone of the alliance, and of course the program of the alliance, the National Democratic Revolution, which seeks to resolve 3 interrelated problems of race, class, and gender. So that program continues to unite the alliance and create the process of the alliance. So because of the duality of the membership of the alliance, every leader can serve in any of the alliance organization or in all of them at the same time. There's no problem with that, and there's history to that. We can give examples of Dan Klume, Moses Kotani, Moses Mabhida. They would have served in different. Moses Mabhida at some point was deputy president of SACP, was official in the Communist Party, or leader of Umkhonto weSizwe, leader in the ANC. So they serve across the board, no problem. So even this matter doesn't arise today. But to the extent that there's no consideration for appropriate consultation within the alliance, the prerogative is exercised in a manner that doesn't take into account the collective being of the alliance. We may have to engage that particular process, which is what we have started to do with the ANC. So our members necessarily have not yet taken a decision whether to withdraw from cabinet or from government as individuals, as ANC members. If they withdraw, they will withdraw as ANC members, not purely or necessarily as party members. And I suppose that because this matter affects all ANC members, it will also affect the ANC members who are not necessarily party members. So it's not just about SACP members. Now, yes, we don't want to necessarily go into inner detail, but suffice to say, this intelligence report is indeed part of the reason given why these comrades were brought back from outside. And we still objected to that, because we felt that a matter of this nature could have been handled far differently. We are unhappy about it. That's why we objected. We objected both to the removal of the comrades as well as the intended replacement. Of course, even the reasons given. So we objected to that. It's important that that part is noted, because what has been fed to some media houses, it's an impression that we have been consulted and we accepted. So that's not how it is. That's the record we wanted to set straight. About the gangsters, we say we do not want our government to degenerate into a gangster state, wherein rogue elements, whether using intelligence systems, create an impression that if you want to run a clean governance, for instance, you get targeted. Because, for instance, we have made it very clear. Comrade Pravin has run that ministry with absolute cleanliness. And that's what is impressing us. It's one of the best run departments. We should be emulating other government departments to be run cleanly. In fact, for us as the SACP, governance, and clean governance in particular, has become a critical pillar of the National Democratic Revolution at this current period. That if you can't govern properly, you will not win the confidence of the people. So we have to elevate that particular platform. And as part of our discussion with the ANC, this issue has appeared much more stronger. So we feel that if you allow the security establishment to run amok, to intimidate anyone, there will be no one who will be able to take decisions on behalf of government, because people will be intimidated. Now, what kind of a state will we create? It's a gangster state. It's a mafia-style state. And we do not want to go to that level. We reject that. We will not accept it. It's as simple as that. Well, of course, I've given the part of our response in that regard. The question around the Inspector General's complaint, we we wrote to the Inspector General to express in 2015 the fact that SACP leaders were being harassed, were being listened to, their conversations was listened to, as well as being threatened, so much that we ended up giving a lot of our leaders in provinces security just to protect them. Despite all of that, the state could not even step in to help them, but we continue to provide them with security. When we wrote to the Inspector General as well as the Minister of State Security, firstly, the Inspector General indicates to us that, no, look, give us the evidence of how you discovered, what machines you used, this kind of, complete nonsense. Unacceptable. We don't accept that. And the minister knows our views in this regard. And we handle this professionally. We don't want to use the state as through contacts. That because we have access to a minister, we can just call the minister and say, do this. No. We use the formal process like all South Africans, and that's what we did. And after having done that, we did indicate to the minister that we have sent you a letter you need to address to the concerns that we have raised, and those issues were not actually appropriately responded to. You will also know that, for instance, our national treasurer was nearly assassinated as well, Comrade Joyce Mulemrupa, ultimately leading to her withdrawal from Parliament. That's completely unacceptable. So we will not sit here and allow other South Africans to suffer similar fate on the basis of nursing relationship with some leaders or individuals. We are in a revolution here, as indicated in our statement. In the revolution, we don't struggle because we are friends or we like each other. We don't even serve in collectives, whether in cabinet, in the national executive, or in the central committee, on central executive committee of our structures. We don't serve because we are friends or we like each other. We serve because we've been elected by our membership, and we serve because we are comrades. We should reinforce each other's capacities to fulfill the mission to serve our people and the national democratic revolution. So that matter should not actually even arise, such that we end up necessarily using contacts to get things done. On the motives for doing the reshuffle, obviously, we can only speculate. The reason given, we don't accept. It doesn't take a rocket scientist to really know what was happening. All of these things have been put in public. For instance, when Brian Molefe was sent to Parliament, as another critical factor, we knew officially that Brian was going to go to Parliament through the Northwest Province as an alliance partner. And we did not even disclose it, despite that we did not agree with it. Largely because we felt that that thing was going to disrupt the President's State of the Nation address. We kept this confidentially, comradely, even though we have expressed our objection to the matter. And together with COSATU in the Secretariat, we expressed our objection to that issue. Then he was sent to Parliament. Instead of discussions going on, despite that we objected, he is sworn in. When there's a huge cloud hanging over his head, we have indicated that we respect the rule of law, the process in the law process, which is fundamental. But at the same time, if there's a huge cloud hanging over a comrade's head and that matter is not cleared, you can't give that comrade further good, massive responsibility, like taking the comrade to Parliament. Parliament is an institution where members take an oath of allegiance to the Republic to serve the people. Now, a member that has just been questioned for some transactions when he was in leadership of ESCOM, is sent there to take a new oath. They don't take oath in some of those executive positions that they have. That's why they sometimes believe that they can do as they please. In Parliament, you take an oath. Now, how serious do we take our people if we allow such kind of things to happen? So that's the point that we raised, and we objected to it. We have raised this point again in our bilateral discussion 2 weeks ago to indicate that he must never be brought into any executive position. And all these are disregarded. We find that it is uncomradely, it's not accepted, and our commitment to the alliance should not be abused, particularly on the basis that we know that the Communist Party is too disciplined. It will keep quiet even when we do wrong things. No, we can't keep quiet when wrong things are happening. Therefore, we will not necessarily say we know the motive, but we can speculate. We have raised issues. There's no doubt about the fact that, in fact, in our bilateral discussions, I've got a document here, which unfortunately this one I'm not going to share with you. It this was on our discussion with the ANC on the 13th of March. This document, mine is 14-page document. Under this document, we have tabled about 30 critical points for consideration by our leadership under 5 key categories. One was on governance, where we're addressing even problems of corruption. Corruption in state-owned enterprises or state-owned companies and agencies like SASA, PRASA, DINEL, SAA, SABC, and so forth, ESCOM, institutions that we feel are critical to drive the second radical phase of our transition and to drive its radical economic content. If those institutions are paralyzed, disrupted by a corrupt environment, how are we going to drive this program as a liberation movement and through our state and political power that the people have bestowed on us? So we've raised these questions in our discussion with the movement. We've raised challenges facing our movement broadly: factionalism, gatekeeping, bulk membership buying. We have said to the ANC last year, before this year's bilateral discussions, we have known, it has come to our attention because our members are also in structures of the ANC. And I think that's the point that comrades must know. There's nothing that you can do in the ANC literally that will not come aware of. It's almost impossible because we share membership. In the bulk buying process of membership, people were actually using voters' roll to enlist members of the ANC just so that they can increase their membership for conference. Now, that's unacceptable. And if leadership, when we have requested it to make interventions to stop this kind of things, they do nothing. Because some of the factional intentions or processes that abuse organizational procedures are people that will support them. They keep quiet about it. You can't run an organization like that. That is why we have condemned those things. So we discussed the questions of challenges facing our revolution and our movement in particular. We also discussed the problems of course, this question of factionalism. We have indicated the fact that it affects all of us in the alliance. If it affects the ANC, it goes into COSATU, it goes into the party, it goes into SANCO, and as well as our mass democratic formations that are associated with our liberation movement. So that's why we have to deal with it decisively. And we have called on the president to be presidential and be above factions and come out openly and condemn factions, particularly the known ones, those that have been given names. I don't know if City Press is here, because City Press gave the name of the Premier League faction, and later on the factionalists are now saying, no, this name came from the Communist Party. It did not come from us, it came from the City Press newspaper. So the leadership must be able to come out openly and be above factions and unite the movement. But if you associate yourself with activities of a faction or you are seen to be, then you will not be able to play a unifying role at the level of that national leadership, which is the task of leadership, to unite the organization as well so that it can effectively implement its programs. Therefore, we also discussed this question. I feel that maybe it's important just to give you the summaries of the 5 key points. We discussed the question of the reconfiguration of the alliance. That question is still undergoing further discussions. But from our perspective is that the conditions have largely changed since 1994 or post-1990. And to the extent that the conditions have changed this way, the modus operandi of the alliance
The only way to pour the perfect beer, this professional barman would tell you, is into a glass tilted at exactly 45 degrees. Oh, bless you. Bless you, sir. Bless you again. Well, we'd say the perfect way to pour a beer is at this angle, straight into your mouth.
Buy a Castle Light 18-pack handies for the price of 12 at just $99.99 from Tops at Spar.
In 2013, there were similar disturbances at this very facility, and it would seem to me that this time around, the same issues that led to those disturbances are still prevalent.
This time around, funny enough, the 26th...
The abuse of security organs for political ends. You will know we've raised these concerns previously. We have taken up even the abuse of the walks. In the run-up to Polokwane, it was a similar problem with the Scorpions. We changed them to try and make sure that they focus on the national priority of fighting crime. Instead, some of them allowed themselves to be abused and used by political leaders. We want those institutions not to be abused by anybody. That is why, for instance, we have seen a situation where there's been an incessant chase of former liberation fighters. You can mention, for instance, McBride, Dramat, and many others. So our comrades can't lead these security institutions because they are marked to fail by particularly operatives of the former apartheid special branch who tortured our comrades, who killed and buried our comrades in secret graves. We reconciled with them and included them into the new democratic dispensation on the basis that they are all South African. But we never thought that when they are given responsibility to lead, they will allow abuse of power and now begin to chase our comrades. That we reject and we won't accept as a Communist Party. Our comrades cannot be tortured by their former torturers under a democratic dispensation. That is why this section on abuse of security organs, we have highlighted it clearly and we want it addressed as a matter of agency. So it is in this regard that this rogue intelligence unit should not be allowed to distort relations in the movement, relations in government, to mislead political leadership so that they can embark on taking wrong issues. This question, this intelligence report that we now know, I received another one, which I want Maso to share with you. It's a heavy one, it's 41 pages. I don't know, Maso, how we can make this possible. Yeah, we can make it available on email. This one is from the Bell Pottinger group. The PR support for the Gupta family, that's what is written. I received it anonymously. I want to distribute it openly. There's no problem with that. Even that one that is now being used to remove our comrades, to threaten our comrades who are doing well, like Comrade Pravin and SABC, Jonas. If they have, those that I have, I know one newspaper wrote about it. I hope that they can share with us, like others have shared anonymously. We'll make it public so that the people can make a judgment. We cannot be led by rogue elements outside formal structures who wants to destroy our revolution, who wants to destroy our government. So that's the point that we're raising. With regard to whether the ANC officials agreed with the reshuffle. The briefing, we were all together in the meeting, but it was largely to us because the ANC officials were to still have a meeting with their president. We rejected that as the Communist Party. They remained in the meeting to further have a discussion. We do not know what happened in that discussion. But for our side, we did not agree with the intention to reshuffle, nor with the motive, nor even with the intended replacement. It's as simple as that. But we've convened a Politburo taking place tomorrow, on Friday. It's a normal Politburo on our agenda. You can see our year planner there behind you. It's there. So that Politburo is taking place tomorrow. It will definitely discuss this matter as an urgent matter that needs the attention of the Communist Party. Okay, yeah, thank you very much. I'm sorry for taking too long on these questions. I will for which one?
Mine was, what would be the implications for removing Pravin Gordhan for the alliance and the ANC?
Oh, yeah. Extremely important.
Can I just also?
Okay. Yeah. You can also let me just talk to this question, Gamathats, and then I'll allow Comrade Malika to speak to one point. The first one is that, you know, the last decision to remove Comrade Nene, it is said by statistics, economic statistics, that the country lost between 89 to 100 billion rands during that period. That was the calculation of the immediate period before the sense of recovery. We don't know when the rand got weakened and it peaked at that particular level, how much more we continue to lose. Particularly the pension funds, which were heavily affected, because they are the ones that have invested all over the world. And these are pension funds of the workers. So much that apparently, if you were to calculate your pension fund pre that decision and after, you will find a huge difference on the basis of impact of that particular decision. Now, it is very important for the revolution to notice this, that a country, a developing country like ours, with, of course, features of a developed country somehow, because if you go to Santen, for instance, you feel like you're in a developed world. A country such as ours overall cannot afford gross mistakes that makes it lose over 89 billion rands in a period of a month or two. And if people take decisions of that nature, they must be accountable for their actions. Now, you can't continue to repeat similar things for whatever valid reasons you put forward. And this is not to say Pravin is not a minister serving in Comrade Jacob Zuma's cabinet. No, it doesn't mean that. But what it means is that that department is an extremely sensitive department. It must be treated with care. It must be handled with care. We must not allow the parasites and the vultures to encircle it and loot it completely, which is almost like what is intended to an impression is created that now we will open the floodgates for everyone to go and loot that particular department or through that particular department. Because you will notice that, for instance, some of the key departments will require strategic relations with other countries or even businesses and so forth that they enter into to be approved by that particular department. Take, for instance, ESCOM or DINEL. All those things that were delayed for approval because they would not have met necessary requirements. Those requirements are critical. And therefore, the leadership in that department, we need good, sober leadership, not populist. We, as the Communist Party, have not always agreed with the political posture of that particular department. But we've also noted that that department is not a department isolated from government. It's part and parcel of government that we lead. It's our department. It's not some outside department. It's not a consultant to government. It's a government department. So its policies are policies of government. So they should not be made scapegoats when it suits certain individuals. When there are successes, there's collective responsibility for the successes. So the positions that they take are within government policy. If they need change, they must change policy of government. Then that department will implement these new changes. But for now, we feel that any action that is taken that may lead to what we saw in 2015, serious action must be taken against those that are responsible. Because it can't be that people can just go and take any decision that affects the lives of our people and they get away with murder. No, it can't happen like that. It shouldn't happen like that, actually. There must be accountability. In fact, that will be a gross nature of violation of accountability, actually. So it shouldn't happen like that in a democracy. So we feel that all care will be taken, will be considered to make sure that such a decision, when it is appropriate and when it is taken, it has taken into account all those problems. But at the moment, we don't agree with that posture that may seek to further harm our economy. And also, I think it is really pathetic. How can you believe that a minister with a delegation of business and trade union leadership organize an investment trip to go and lure people to come and invest in our country? Possibly a group of investors controlling no less than $2.5 trillion US portfolios. These are the people that can actually take decisions at a whim if they are given proper assurances to come and invest in our country. We are looking for foreign direct investments. We're not saying foreign direct investments is the be-all and end-all of economic investment, but that's critical. How can you even believe that such a trip is a trip against the country? I mean, this is the thing that we should not be treated like children, really. And even our people, even those that are not politically conscious, they will read this thing quite clearly. They won't believe this thing. And that is why in a real and proper action need to be taken to avoid coming to conclusions to taking such kind of decisions so easily. It shouldn't be on the basis of the behest of an individual. I don't like this comrade. I feel now it's time I've received some report, then I take action. No, it shouldn't be like that. Sure, Commissar, you can put the point that you raised.
Mathatsi had asked, what do you think the president will do next? I mean, I think the first thing that the statement tries to point to the idea that we've taken an extraordinary measure, not because we've lost confidence in a process that is undergoing. There were initial discussions, and we've come out to clarify what has been distorted. Our expectation is that there should be a process where we still go back to the table to conclude the discussions. The president had expressed an intention, the party had given the responses, the president remained meeting with the officials of the ANC. We don't know what happened. And as it normally happens, at the conclusion of such discussions with the officials of the ANC, there's a feedback loop with the rest of the alliance partners. So from where we're sitting, Matters, we expect that process to still go on, of political discussions and engagements. And we have confidence in that process. So we're not going to invest a lot of time speculating on what happens. Deployees of the ANC understand the processes of the ANC, and therefore they can't act willy-nilly outside of those processes. Okay, let's give the second round guys a chance. So it's number 1, number 2, number 3, number 4. Is there somebody there? Number 5. 5. Okay. We'll come back. We'll come back here. 1, 2, 3. So there's number 5 there. Then there's 1, 2, 3.
Is there water at the back there?
There's no water at the back.
If we can share.
So you can see the trade-off of asking one question each. But if you pile them up, it's
water.
So yeah, self-regulate.
Okay.
Sure.
I'm Khalambata from Bloomberg News. Can you take us into the confidence of some of the names that were mentioned for the intended replacements for the finance minister and his deputy? Was Brian Molefe part of the names that were put forward for possible replacements? And then secondly, if you've said that you've objected to certain steps that have been taken in government before, for instance, Mr. Molefe being brought into Parliament, if as it is the president's prerogative to replace and make changes to his cabinet, if he does go ahead without further engagement with you, will the SACP consider pulling out of the tripartite alliance?
Alvin Simpier from SABC TV News. It's quite clear that the relationship with the president, the relationship between the president and Pravin Gordhan has broken down, if not Pravin Gordhan and the minister, considering that the president has tabled such a report in front of the SACP and in front of the ANC's top six. What do you guys then suggest should happen? Because one has got to give. It's either the president leaves or it's either Pravin Gordhan and Mcebisi Jonas leaves. So what do you suggest should happen in this regard? You speak about the 89 billion rand that the country lost over the past 2 months during the Nenegate saga. Is it not time that the president be recalled from Parliament? Because even though you go to the elective conference, and the president has made it clear that he will not stand at the elective conference, you still have a president who will be the president of the country for 2 more years, and you've already raised issues with regards to his leadership and mistakes that have been made, and you're saying that these mistakes can't continue. The final question is around the Browse Mole report. Is that it's quite interesting that you have this report that is coming out now, and back in 2007 you had the report that was almost similar with which accused President Jacob Zuma of trying to overthrow the government and trying to become president by support from the Angolan intelligence. What does this point to? Does it not point to an environment within the alliance where the state apparatus have been used even way back before President Jacob Zuma's time in governance?
Thanks. Morning, Warren Thompson from MoneyWeb. You indicated in your statement, Deputy General Secretary, of the removal of Pravin Gordhan and his deputy. I wanted to ask if at the time or after that there was any indication from the ANC they were considering a broader cabinet reshuffle. We've been led to believe that as many as 12 ministers may be reshuffled. And then I just wanted to understand just with clarity to the intelligence report that was presented to you in that meeting on Monday, who the President said the authors of that report were, if it was indeed an organ of state, compiled by an organ of state, or if it was a team within the ruling party itself. Thank you.
Hi, I'm TJ from Reuters. There's been a few meetings since Monday now, and I mean, maybe you know what happened in those meetings. Do you know for a fact that the Minister of Finance has been removed? And where's he been replaced with?
Okay, let's say number 5.
Hi, thank you. TD from News 24. Just 2 very quick ones. One is a little bit close to what I think Amkhelang asked. You said Brian Molefe was not an option. You wouldn't want him as a member of the executive. Who would have been, in terms of the discussions, were there other names that were brought forward? Was there a compromise that maybe all parties could find themselves agreeing on? And also, 2 days ago, there's also speculation around a resignation. I remember hearing Kosatu's GS saying it was an embarrassment for the country, that he didn't think that Pravin Gordhan would resign, but there was lots of talk about it. Was there a conversation around that? Was it a legitimate consideration on his part? Thank you.
Okay. Next round. We're sitting with 9 questions now. No, I said you're in the other round. You're number 1 on the next round. Sure.
Okay. No.
Otherwise, we lose track of the questions.
Yeah, I mean, just sneak in right at the end. Right at the end. Of the second round. Tail, a small tail at the end.
Okay.
Weekend special.
let me say that one, the main intention was not to expose the confidential nature of the discussions. I've gone a little bit in detail about that, giving you that primarily, yes, the intelligence information was given to us, which we questioned. So that's what we think it's important for the record. The most important thing for us was to indicate that yes, we were consulted and we did not agree. Because an impression created is that we agreed. We did not agree. That's the most important part. So we don't want to go into the confidentiality aspect of that, whether it's the names of people who were raised and so forth and so forth. We don't want to go into that. I think the question about the broader cabinet reshuffle, we do not know that. What we were briefed about was this specific one on the minister and his deputy minister of finance. Regarding the president and PG's relations, we still believe that's the point that they don't have to be friends to work together. They don't even have to like each other to work together. PG is a member of the National Executive Committee of the ANC. So what should he do? Should he not go to the NEC because he doesn't like the president? Or should the president say, I can't come to the NEC because I don't like PG? They don't have to like each other. They are comrades. They must work together. It's as simple as that. We are not friends in the revolution. We are comrades. Of course, because we are comrades, we can socialize together, become friendly with each other, because we know each other too much, we spend too much time together, and so forth. We become colleagues. But fundamentally, these are revolutionaries, mandated by the movement to serve the people. On whether the report comes from the organs of state or from inside the movement, well, that's part of the confidential nature. The bottom line is that our belief is that the president cannot use outside intelligence information for any action that he has to exercise. He must use state organs, which is part of the thing that worries us. We have state organs that are really preoccupying themselves with irrelevant things. Over 21 schools are banned in Vuwani. Where were these state organs, security state organs that could have prevented that? They don't. But where university buildings are destroyed, almost to a cost of $1 billion, where are these state organs to prevent that from taking place or to alert the state that this will happen? They are not there. They are wasting huge resources concerning themselves on matters that are insignificant, just so that they can hype up the president's decisions. It is that rock element that we seek to remove from our state institutions, particularly from intelligence organs. We should not rely on those kind of things. Like this thing that I received anonymously. So it's the same thing as the same approach with the browse mode document. In fact, safe to say, I was a victim of this question when the browse mode thing came out. I was actually shot and left for dead because of this thing, that browse mode issue. I was shot and left for dead on wrong things. Now it's happening again, although this time on steroids, as one doctor said to me the other day. So it's corruption on steroids, it's abuse of state organs on steroids, and so forth. We have to come up and stop this absolute nonsense that is taking place. We reject that as a Communist Party.
But you didn't answer the second question on whether...
Please.
Let her get there, come, sir.
Let's please.
Which one?
My second question on whether if President Zuma goes ahead and replaces PG, whether you consider pulling out of the alliance.
Oh yeah, no. Firstly, the decision to pull out of the alliance, it's a bigger decision. It's a decision that will not come lightly. because it's a decision that can destroy this revolution. We're aware about that, and the ANC is aware about that. That is why we've always said our first choice is to rescue the ANC from the abyss that is falling into because of factionalism and all this abuse of organizational processes, gatekeeping and so forth, factionalism and others. But to restore the credibility of the ANC, to elevate its values that have been an integral component, a congruent component of the people of South Africa's struggles for liberation. So that task of restoring and defending our revolution is extremely important. So you may call it our first prize. Our first prize is to defend our revolution. So when we take a decision that may necessarily destroy that revolution, it will not just come, say, from a Politburo. It will need to come from a different organ of the Communist Party. Congress, specifically, that's the highest decision-making body of the Communist Party. Congress is not even going to debate that. In fact, this discussion about whether we should stand on our own or not, it has even nothing to do with whether we will leave the alliance or not. It's just about a political independence of the Communist Party. Of course, it has ramifications for the way the alliance is it's organized. But it's not about whether to leave or not leave the alliance.
Now he has lost track of the questions. You were going taking the page to answer the next question.
No, it's fine. It's done. It's about those names which we said there's no need to share that. The main thing was to share the principle.
My second question as well wasn't answered. It is, you head into an elective conference. President Jacob Zuma is not there anymore as president of the ANC, but he remains president of the country, which means that he still has executive power. Is it not time to recall the president to avoid any more mistakes, as you've pointed out?
That's a decision that ultimately the ANC structures must take. Of course, the alliance component, the party in particular, if there's gross misconduct, gross abuse of power, we definitely have to raise our voice much more clearly and be able to confront the problem. But we have not come to that particular decision as yet. We are in an engaging process. So to the extent that, for instance, the ANC is unable to deal with major questions that we have raised about these 30 points, amongst those are major issues. If, for instance, in the ongoing talks that we have embarked on, they are unable to respond sufficiently to some of those, we'll have to take some radical decisions.
Okay. There's number one. There's, there were two hands at the back, so 2, 3, yeah. So, yes. And then the tape. We seem to be nearing towards the end now. Yeah, I can see from the indication. Kathrada has also slipped in a note that they are about to miss filing time, reminding all of you. So, yeah. Oh, also City Press is here. Okay.
Should we conclude then that your discussions around the issues raised on the bilateral are concluded? And if not, when are you going to be concluding those? Did you get a response from the leadership? And as well, when are you expecting to be meeting with the ANC? Because seemingly the president will have to go and apply it. When are you going to be meeting with him? With the leadership?
2 questions.
Yeah.
Well.
Kyle from The Times. So considering the current state of play politically, do you still feel that, does the SACP feel that President Jacob Zuma is still a worthy president for South Africa? And will this be discussed at this weekend's Politburo? Obviously, a lot of developments this week. Can you sort of give us an indication of what's going to be on the agenda for you this weekend? And then the national conference, which is in July, if I'm not mistaken, for the SACP, do you not feel that that's too far away? Do you think that it's too late by that time, maybe, for you to meet and decide on your political independence? Thank you.
Okay. The second take us?
So it's Govan again. I just wanted to find out whether the South African Communist Party trusts the Justice and Security Cluster of the government, and whether it believes that South Africans should continue to trust what the Justice and Security Cluster is saying to them.
Clasizo?
So my tail question, all of this put together, the picture you paint, if you're using revolutionary terms, sounds like counter-revolution. Is the president a counter-revolutionary?
I could sense. You wanted to say something.
Yes, sorry to last. Mr. Mafella, I just wanted to find out, did the president indicate at all a time frame as to when he wanted to do this reshuffle? Did he merely say, this is my plan? And then the intelligence report that you read, or that was shared with you guys, would you have trusted that to make any such decision? Thank you.
Any going Bloemfontein, the appeal court now.
Sorry, just clarity on your objection to the call by the president. Were you objecting to the replacement of the finance minister and the deputy, or are you objecting to a reshuffle? Thanks, whether it involves the finance minister or not.
Last question.
1-1.
Okay.
1-1.
I'm just going to let him to Tulasi's questions. Is President Jacob Zuma a liability to the alliance? Is he the sole reason that the state today is in a huge decline, with a huge clouds hanging over it? And is he a contaminant? Thank you.
I know you've expressed confidence in Finance Minister Pravin Gordhan, but clearly we are at a point of a stalemate where you have a president who does not want the current finance minister. Would you consider a compromise in the next talks that you have with the president? Or are you set on PG as the finance minister?
Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. The Deputy General Secretary will conclude the answering session so that we also open space for some one-on-one interactions. DGS?
Yeah, thanks, Commissioner. No, let me say, yeah, there are many questions. I think they are interlinking with what we've said earlier, but I'll try and be as short as possible. On the discussions with the ANC, it was a continuation of our bilateral meeting on the 13th of March, which we postponed to the 27th of March. The previous one was between the Politburo of the SACP and the ANC NWC. We presented this document that I showed you, and we have not leaked it, isn't it? Yes, this document. We have not leaked it. We presented this document, and after that, we then reconvened now as officials, no longer PB NWC. So it was a continuation of the same discussions. At the core of these discussions is the state of the national democratic revolution, the strategic questions that we are looking at, revitalization of the NDR, reconnection with the motive forces of our revolution, and how to assert democratic, moral, and ethical leadership of society as expected by our people from the alliance, as headed by the ANC. So the PB meeting will definitely receive a report of the officials from these ongoing discussions. What I can say is that the ANC gave us a response to some of the questions in a written form. But even that written form response, we will not leak it, because we don't leak. So they gave us a written response, and we engaged them. The response was not sufficient to the questions that we covered. That is why there's a need for ongoing discussions. We have agreed to meet soon, and the Secretariat has been mandated to prioritize the issues on the basis of their significance. Prioritize them so that a meeting is arranged soon to sort out all those problems. Whether when to meet with the president, of course the PB would have further discussions. they may require further discussions quite soon or not, particularly in the midst of the point that we're raising. Because we also felt that we could not wait for this question until the PB, because the media houses are running with it. The online editions are full of it. And it distorts our image. We're a truthful party. Part of revolutionary principles is truthfulness and honesty. And we want to keep that. And we don't want that principle to be violated, not by any one of our allies or individual comrades. So whether the president is worthy, it's a worthy president, that's not for us perhaps to respond. It's for South Africans to respond to that particular question, whether he's a worthy president or not. The July Congress, it is not going to decide about our independence. We are an independent political organization already. We have been for so many years. In fact, people just don't know, or because they don't pay enough attention on this matter. The Communist Party in this country, for the record, runs more political campaigns than all other political parties combined. The political parties just comment on issues. We run campaigns. We have a big banner, we normally show like this, but bigger one. This one is of course in memory of our stalwart Ahmed Kathrada, where we show, for instance, our major Red October campaigns on issues. We have run national campaigns on public education, on public health, leading to NHI, on land reform. Our Maibu Mslaba campaign, which led to the National Land Summit in 2005, was actually attacked, so to speak, or disrupted by a group of the LPM people led by Andy Lemkita. At the time, who is now the champion of land reform. We were marching to Agri SA at the time, 2005 in Pretoria. So we've been on these massive campaigns continuously than any other political organization. Our financial sector campaign, with its multiple campaigns inside it, where we're confronting directly monopoly capital in this country. So we've always been running independent campaigns, campaigns against corruption. We're the first political organization to run, not just to condemn, but to run a fully fledged national campaign against corruption. And we lost cadres, top cadres of the Communist Party, quality cadres. Bomba Njangas in Mpumalanga and Comrade Musala in Mpumalanga were our members. Comrade Mospagwe in Northwest and others who were victims of this particular campaign, who were martyrs of this particular campaign. So we've always been running independent political campaigns as the Communist Party. We're an independent organization, but we are in alliance with the African National Congress. So we the July meeting is not necessarily too late, because it's not going to decide about our independence, but it's going to decide whether, among the issues for consideration, is whether we can put our name on the ballot independent of the ANC. That even if we were to do that, we are not conceptualizing a notion of going it alone per se. We are looking at working with a wide range of progressive and social formations that share our perspective. So it will not necessarily be a Communist Party thing per se, even if it were to happen. Because the party is not free from the working class that it seeks to lead. It is part and parcel of the working class movement. On the justice security cluster and the trust by South African people, of course, our view is that we have many hardworking men and women of our country who are patriots, who are wearing the national uniform. The police, the soldiers, and others, the intelligence officers. There are many of those who are doing well in service of our country. They risk their life on a daily basis, and we applaud their efforts, their bravery to defend us, to make us live better and safer in our communities. But there's no doubt that crime has escalated in this country. The security cluster is disorganized. I mean, we don't have to come to this point, but maybe it's important that I also raise it. The largest union organizing the police force is POPCRO, an allied union to our party and the ANC, because it's part of COSATU. You can ask, since when did you see them working hand in hand with the minister? At some point, I was even asked to facilitate a meeting between the minister and POPCRO. It shouldn't be. Those are they are an important union at the core of fighting crime, with more members who risk their life on daily basis. So if you have a sense of lack of coordination of such kind of strategic institutions and organs and organizations that can assist in the fight against crime, you'll continue to have all these problems like the heist at the airport, the attack at the Chief Justice Office, which, as we have indicated in our statement, we see a common effect, commonality in how these actions are conducted. But the general safety of the population of South Africa is our major concern. And we think that we can do better. We have xenophobic violence that erupts from time to time. Where is our intelligence services? Instead, they are focusing on wrong things instead of stopping this kind of unacceptable behavior. So that's what we want them to focus on, and we are prepared to work with them. We are prepared to work with them in our communities to fight crime. So we remain having confidence in this in the security cluster, but we must indicate that there seems to be more attention on the rogue elements, supporting the rogue elements, and the fight amongst the senior officers in these divisions than actually on the actual fight against corruption. That's what we want to see the criminal justice system focusing on. Well, we can't say the president is a counter-revolutionary. No, we can't say that. But the intelligence report that was given to us, we were not happy with it. That's what we can simply say. That's why we also felt that there could have been a further process before decisions based on it or decisions based on it are taken. But we were not, in fact, the big issue is that maybe we've reached a time where we need a real restructuring of that sector. Because at the moment, I don't think it's really useful in the manner that a lot of work is conducted. It is more political intelligence. We need intelligence that can create safety amongst our people. That's the nature of intelligence that we need. We don't need intelligence that everyone, when we walk around, you look yourself in the back if you have been followed or looked after, and so forth and so forth. We don't want that. So we were on the question of whether we were objecting to the reshuffle or to the finance minister specifically. The issue brought to our attention was the question of the removal of Minister Pravin Gordhan and his deputy. That's what we rejected. We did not agree to it. Is Zuma a Gupta minion? No, I don't think we should put it in that way. We are on record as a Communist Party to have said, we raised this question of the Guptas officially in the ANC last year, January. Having raised this matter with the president on several occasions, and we've gone on record to have said that. We raised this question about the toxic relationship with the Guptas and the toxic or the poisonous impact of the Guptas on relationship in the alliance. And we have indicated to our comrades that they do not account to the Guptas. No civil servant account to the Guptas. No single revolutionary account to a family. We don't account to the Mandelas, the Tambos, the Sisulus, prestigious families in our revolution, the Kotanis, the Marx, and so forth. We account to the movement, all of us. No one accounts to a family. When we realized that they were having an undue influence on the affairs of the movement and affairs of the state, we came out clearly, comradely, robustly, cautiously, we raised this question. And we further said, after we raised this matter to say, let this matter be addressed, we were then told that, no, we must bring evidence. We didn't have evidence to that extent that they wanted. But we said, if you want evidence, go and establish a judicial commission of inquiry on corporate state capture. Underline the word corporate state capture. Meaning that we could have investigated any other monopoly capital that you wanted, or any other capital that you wanted that we feel have been capturing the state or unduly influencing state decisions. That would have included the Guptas. We're not targeting them. Instead, we were met with a massive attack defending the Guptas. That why are we talking about the Guptas instead of monopoly capital, the Ruperts and the Oppenheimers? We have repeated this matter more often than not, that we don't care whether it's the Guptas, the Ruperts, or the Oppenheimers. We don't like all of them. But they keep on reminding us, but what about this one? So they deflect the issue. And in fact, this document that we are going to put on email to you will give you an indication of where that deflection comes from. So we raised this question openly. We now have said in our engagement with the ANC, we think the citizenship of the Guptas must be revoked because of their poisonous nature. Even, for instance, how they are covering the news in their channels this week, it's shocking. Completely factional. I mean, how do you even, of course, because it's an independent news channel, they can say whatever, but completely factional. Even the funeral of Comrade Kathrada, they say it was factional. The speakers were factional. How do you say leadership of the alliance going to address a funeral service are factional? We have the General Secretary of the ANC, the Secretary General of COSATU, the General Secretary of the SACP and the ANC, all of them addressing this funeral, and ANN7 says this was factions. And these are the people that address this one and address that one. The others were not invited. Who was invited? That's a problem. And I think that it is critical that the question of how we deal with corporate capture, including the role of the Guptas, that when we raised these matters, we were not listened to. And comrades, when we were confronted to say, give us evidence, comrades came out to the fore. And one of them is Mcebisi Jonas. That's the reason, in my view, this is personal. That's one of the reasons I feel he's been ostracized in this form, because he came out. He had the guts to reject an approach by the Guptas. The public protector did an investigation, influenced by other people who lodged a formal complaint, not us. But we raised the matter. We asked the president to set up this question, to set up judicial commission, which would have allowed him even to set up his own terms of reference on the investigation. He didn't. The public protector goes ahead and makes an investigation, and she now puts terms in a recommendation on what needs to be done. For that matter, creating what you call a judicial overreach. Because she simply says, no, from a brief investigation, she feels that these matters affect the president. Therefore, he may be biased if he were to be the one that actually establishes the commission, which becomes another issue. And it is from that perspective, by the way, that the questions around Comrade Brian Molefe arises. When he resigned out of his own will, no one forced him to resign. I don't know how you work in the media, you know possibly how much a CEO of ESCOM earns. Amongst the highest earners in the country, several millions, I guess. He left there to go and take a parliamentary seat that is worth less than 1.5 million from the many millions that he was getting at ESCOM, out of his own will, because he felt the pressure of advancing state money, because ESCOM money is our money, advancing state money to the Guptas to go and participate in business transactions, something that should not have ever happened. Actually, he must account for it, that action. He must account for it. It doesn't matter what kind of a processes you put in, a decoy process. That you will put this thing and say, no, because we have done it before and so forth and so forth. But the extent to which over 600 million is handed over to a family to conduct business. That is why also in our discussion with the ANC, we have said they must investigate the Tegeta deal with Eskom. We think that deal must come under investigation. So we don't think necessarily the president is a Gupta minion, but we feel that the Guptas have a negative influence on the movement. Well, the issue of compromise on PG as minister, we have said this is one minister that is running a clean administration. And we are saying a key pillar of the national democratic revolution, that is of our revolution today, of our program in government today, a key pillar of that is good governance. Now, when a member is leading, is an excellent governor, why do you remove him? Why does it even arise that he should be removed? That is why, for instance, the removal has nothing to do with his performance as minister. It has to do with some shoddy intelligence report that builds suspicion on the basis of not him wanting to save the country. For all God's sake, people, who on earth can believe that a man who participated in the highest form of the revolution, armed struggle, participated in the group of Operation Vola, a very sensitive project that has life and death dimensions from the revolutionary side, that man can simply sell his own country? With PG, I don't believe that. With SABC, I don't believe that. I have firm belief personally, and I guess this perspective is shared by many in the Communist Party. These comrades have served our movement with absolute distinction. They deserve our support, and they should not be harassed. That's our view. We don't think that they should be harassed and removed from office for doing well. Any comrade who's doing well must be supported instead of being harassed. And that's the sense we are getting here, that this comrade is being harassed. And now other ministers, Faith Mutambi, for instance, Minister Faith Mutambi, she writes something yesterday to the extent that we should leave the president to act as he pleases. PG is not a super minister. We do not want PG to be a minister. We just want him to be just a good minister. He's not a super minister. He should not be a super minister. We just want him to be a good minister, a good deployee of the movement. He must do well and run his department well. And so far, we are confident he has been doing that. If there were issues around his inability to lead that department, then that's something else that can be engaged. So there's the question of compromise or no compromise doesn't arise. The issue is that egos aside, people must work together. Simple as that. I think we're done, Commissar.
Muchas gracias, Secretario. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. That concludes the press briefing.
You didn't answer my question. Are you guys opposed to the reshuffle or just the replacement of the president and the minister and the deputy?
Well, I answered that. I said they were briefed on the reshuffle of PG and his deputy. That's what we opposed. That other one we were not aware. We're not. Yeah.
And just lastly, you said something about you haven't taken a decision yet on what you spoke about at the SACP regarding
we don't have money to bury you and explain to your kids what
to that position. Is it going to be a CEC position or leave it to the ministers that are SACP members to decide if they want to leave?
Please. Is this yours?
Well, it will be defined by the meeting that takes that decision. Whether this will be left to the discretion of members or we will take a collective binding decision. So they will discuss that and take that particular decision. But we are not yet there. Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay.
From the moment you start your day. Good morning, everybody. It is 6 o'clock.
We are there for you.
We want a guarantee from the leadership that we should not be leaders who will steal,
I'm prepared to give that guarantee that we should not steal from our people.
We bring your morning into perspective.
This is the reason they keep putting fees up. They're not getting enough money.
We'll make sure that you get the full story.
The police officers from specifically Moffat View Police Station, they support these brothels. What have you found upon your investigations on this matter?
I cannot deny those allegations.
And you can count on the weather team with expertise.
Join us live at 6 a.m. daily.